there are many, many versions of everything having to do with Scott Meredith. You know, I only know what I was told and what I observed at the time. I've heard many other versions.
We should back up and explain this is about Timescape.
This is about Timescape in 1983. However, back in the hinterlands of time, there was a fan named Scott Feldman, who was a member of the Queen's Science Fiction Group. Okay? Scott Feldman.
Was it Scott or Sidney?
No, Sidney was his brother. Or did they change names?
Scott even stole his brother's name.
Scott, Scott gave Sid his name. There are rumors that Sid was Moish, but I can't help you.
I see.
But it is established that Scott was born Sidney Feldman and donated is not as a euphemism, Sid to Sid.
I see. This is very difficult to tell them who the historical record is talking about. Nevertheless, in the fanzines of the late 1930s, there is a Scott Feldman who is very active, at one point the president of the Queen's Science Fiction League, and his vice president, best friend and henchman, Hyman Tiger, who was away from him. At one memorable moment, resigned and declared that they were leaving family. Their arguments about why they were doing this were a little bit opaque even at the time. Prior to that, however, Scott Feldman had gone around introducing his wife to his new wife, his wife to members of the Queen's Science Fiction League. I have a friend who was in the Los Angeles Science Fiction Society in 1940 who knew Scott Feldman. At the time, he changed his name to Scott Meredith. He and Hyman Tiger had moved to Los Angeles and joined Waspus because Scott Feldman had left his wife in New York and was avoiding alimony. This is at least what the members of the Los Angeles Science Fiction League were given to understand in 1942. In 1942, a man named Scott Meredith came back to New York and founded a fee reading service. At the same time, a man named Theodore Sturgeon came to New York from having been in Barbados or Jamaica for a couple of years, Barbados, and founded a literary agency. Okay? After 6 or 8 months, the Sturgeon Literary Agency was failing. And so Scott Meredith, whoever he was, bought the Sturgeon Literary Agency and changed it to the Scott Meredith Literary Agency and combined it with his fee reading service. After that, Scott Meredith began to hire lots and lots of people from the science fiction field. In fact, as far as I can tell, a majority of his employees were from the science fiction field in one way or another, some of them fans, some of them not. An early employee was Lester Del Rey, in 1946, 47, 48. Another employee at that time, up through the early 50s, was a guy named Sal Bambino. Sal became popular under the name Evan Hunter, and also the name Ed McBain, and changed his name to Evan Hunter. But I have an inscribed copy of was it Find the Feathered Serpent?
Yeah.
The first Evan Hunter novel, inscribed to Lester, saying, to Lester Del Rey, thanks for everything. This novel is your fault. You are the one who taught me how to write. This is my first book. I am so pleased, Sal. There are hundreds and hundreds of anecdotes about the Scott Meredith Agency and the Scott Meredith team. Another member of the Queen's Science Fiction League was Henry Moskowitz. Henry Moskowitz in the 1940s went to changed his name to Henry Morrison. Henry Morrison is still a very active and very powerful literate. This was the first of many, many Meredith employees who became either A, writers, because he employed in-house hack writers like Sal and Bina, and sold all their books for them. He also, for instance, when Bob Silverberg graduated college, Bob Silverberg went to work as a hacker. Harry Harrison worked there at one time. Ted White was the foreign rights agency there at one point. Terry Carr worked there at one point. Damon Knight, whole bunches of people. And by the 1960s and 1970s, Richard Curtis, who worked there, became an agent. A number of other people. Half the agents in New York, not just half the science fiction agents, half the agents in New York at any time period. That may be an overestimation, largely, have been associated with the Scott Meredith agency in the first opinion. The reason they left, of course, was that Scott paid them salary, not a commission. Scott was notoriously tight-fisted. Would you like to tell an anecdote or two about it? It comes to the point now where you were working there.
Can I do this without a microphone? Am I all right?
Just quick about it.
If you move the microphone with it.
My original fantasy, and it was a fantasy, was that I would sit at the back of the room and listen, be a witness or a